And we are live. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This, of course, is the Food Safety Chat. I am Bryan Armentrout with the Food Safety Foundation with my good friend, Jose Sabal with Jose Sabal Consulting. How are you, sir?
I'm great, Bryan. Like I'm always saying, I don't know what's going on Fridays, but every time that I'm here, talking to you and having, very nice times in these chats, the weather outside is just perfect.
Well, there you go. I mean, yeah, we need to keep this going because, yeah, it's a good omen then, right? Good.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know what's crazy? I was looking back over our archives on our shows. We've been doing this now since October.
No way.
Isn't that crazy?
Wow. Time flies.
It does. I mean, yeah, it's interesting,
Really?
right? And the older we get, right, we got the gray hair. The quicker it goes, right? It's an interesting thing.
Yeah, especially for the gray hair.
Exactly. Our good friend Melody is on the line. Melody, always good to see you, my friend.
Yep.
Please, everyone. So I am in Colorado. Let us know in the comments where you're listening to in the world today. It's always interesting. We've had people from all over the world, Africa and Turkey, and you name it, people who've been checking in here with the show. Baha, good to see you, my friend, as well. I think you're going to like the topic today. It's going to be an interesting one. So we'll keep the tradition going. So here in Colorado, it's very unsettled weather, Jose. It's been snowing and cold, and then this weekend it's going to be 70. They're saying maybe 80 degrees, and then more snow coming again next week.
Wow.
Yeah, no.
No, we don't have that here.
No.
I mean, we have a lot of rain that is going to, basically start in no time. But besides that, it is possible to have rain and the sun at the same time.
Craziness. So let's get everybody beautiful in DC. I'm jealous. Washington, DC in the springtime is a beautiful place to be. Cherry blossoms and the present from the Japanese government to us. So, Jose, let's pull up our cups.
Oh, yes. I have mine here. I'm ready for that.
I remembered.
I'm ready for that.
Everybody, please join us. Jose with his tea and me with our coffee, and let's all have a sip together here this morning.
Oh, yeah.
Very good. Had a technical issue with my wife's Ember coffee mug. These self-heating mugs. Is the charging base wasn't charging, but I called them and new base on the way right away. So good customer service fixes all problems, right? If you take care of your customers. No questions asked. They said, take a picture of it for us so we can see what the mistake is, and bam, it's on the way FedEx.
Oh, good deal.
Yeah, gotta like that. So, Jose, interesting topic today, right? So we've been talking about food safety culture and the different regulations and SQF version 9 coming and all these type of things. And the one thing that kind of ties these all together, training, right? Huge.
Oh, yes.
And for me, early in my career as a young quality manager working in a plant and then, heading up quality for companies and things like this, training was always kind of this weird thing, right? And a lot of times training gets pushed off on people. And it used to drive me crazy. I mean, it'd be like, oh, no, training, that's the safety guy and that's the HR guy and the quality guy. They take care of training. Here in operations, we make the food and it's your job to do those things. And I was always like, that's not right. That's not right at all.
Yeah. Actually, look at this one, Bryan. This is an example for real life. So I was scheduled to go and perform a consulting job in, I don't recall exactly, I believe it was Connecticut, but I'm not sure. Well, okay. So I arrived to the place and I said, okay, so I'm here, what do you want to do? I was hired originally to perform an audit, an internal audit of the system. And the lady, the SQL practitioner at that time, she said, oh, I'm not aware of that. And I said, what? You're not aware of that? No, we're not. So the thing is that it was a very weird visit, and it ends up in having a conversation about the effectiveness of the training, why people were not wearing the hairnet properly.
Mm-hmm.
And when I start digging on into that, I said, okay, who's training everyone at the processing plant? And the escrow practitioner says, oh, that is a responsibility of IT. And I said, what? IT? Yeah, because they're the ones that have the tools, blah, 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 to create the videos and the PowerPoint presentations and everything. And I said, okay, so do you have a procedure for example, the hairnets and then hand washing, whatever? And she said, yes, we have. Can I see it? And she showed me very nice written procedures. And, more or less, they seem to work. But then when I said, I want to see the video,
Mm-hmm.
the video has nothing to do with the procedures. And my next question was, okay, so you have a bunch of guys in IT developing the materials. Do they know HACCP? Do they know GNPs? What is their background? Are they instructors? Do they have any trainer to do those activities? Do they understand what is a system? So who's the trainer? And guess what?
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy, right? As I was preparing for this show, I pulled up the FSMA regulations and did a search, and the word training shows up 16 times in the regs. Right?
Yes.
And it's always paired with training qualified records, right? Those three things always, right?
Yes.
So yeah, if you give somebody a PowerPoint and put them in a dark room with 10 people and say, here, at the end of this shift, everybody's tired after working 10 hours, show them this PowerPoint, give them this quiz and have them sign this. What good is that?
Zero.
Right. Absolutely. You're just checking a box. And it's something time and time again that we see is that if you're just doing something to check a box, you're wasting your time.
Yeah. And you know what? In systems, Bryan, and you know this as well as me, and most likely most of the people here in the chat right now. In systems, the only way that you can transfer the knowledge that is in your documentation is by training.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, when I'm teaching, let's say, a preventive control for human food, what am I expecting that the attendees are going to have? Well, a copy of the regulation, a copy of the manual, all the exercises, and so on. So they and me are looking exactly at the same document. So when
Mm-hmm.
people are training, why they are not using their own documentation? That is the source of the how, that is the source of the when, that is the source of the who. That who is the one that is based on SQA, based on FDA, must be a qualified individual,
Mm-hmm.
like you mentioned. So,
well, oh no, please continue.
No, I'm done.
It's just that qualified individual for me is kind of when I hear that phrase, right? Because I think that's something in FSMA that people overlook. It's, okay, I'll become a PCQI and I'll go take the course and I'll get the certificate and that's it. They forget about the qualified individual, right? So you put together your food safety plan, you have your preventive controls and these type of things. You know what's funny on that? So just a little side note. I've pretty much evolved away from putting CCPs when I work with my clients in food safety plans. It's preventive controls, right? It's that system. But with that is that qualified individual, right? So you are the pasteurizer operator. How are you qualified to manage that preventive control at that point?
Mm-hmm.
Just because you've been doing it for 20 years?
No. Mm-mm.
No. And the big part with that is you have to show, right? Everything, right? FDA says this time and time and time again. Show me, right? And in the regs, right, we were talking about earlier, in the regs, it says you need to show proof. If it's not documented, you didn't do it, right? And I think that's the disconnect in companies with training, Jose, is the proof piece.
Yes.
It's crazy. Our good friend Zoe is on the line. I think this is the first time I've seen Zoe's name come up. Zoe, glad to have you here. Yes, Jose and I both know Zoe, very nice person.
Yep.
Melody has a comment here. Absolutely agree. The verification of the training is key. The effectiveness of training makes the difference. 100% Melody. Couldn't be more correct.
100%. Oh yes. Oh yes. And you know what? The other thing from FDA, Brian, is that if you start reading in subpart A, it says that, I mean, in every facility, you must have a PCQI,
Mhm.
which by definition is a qualified individual that has the PCQI training, that took the PCQI training. So and now is capable or supposed to be prepared in order to develop the food safety plan and all the preventive controls and so on. Okay.
Right.
Now,
Yeah.
if you go to subpart A, and you look at the section 117.4 in the regulation for human food, it says a specific requirement for people, and it says the entire management of the company is responsible for the effective implementation of the GMPs and the effective implementation of the record keeping for those GMPs. Then it defines that the owner is basically responsible for everything. And then it goes into the details, indicating which are the specific responsibilities for each and every single employee working at the facility. And if you read that carefully, you are going to find that at the end of each paragraph, there are two words that are basically the same. And those two words are for the individual's assigned duties.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at that, and that's what kind of hit me one time a long time ago when I was reading the regulation, trying to understand. I said, "Oh my goodness, assigned duties." So the duty, I said, "Well, these are the procedures in my system." And assign is because I need to look for one person in my organizational chart to assign the duties that are in my own procedures. So that's a how. That's the who in the written procedures. So there is a connection between systems and the FDA.
Yep, absolutely. And one good way to look at that, and what I built into my systems, is so you have your food safety plan, and now you have your team, and right, so everybody needs to be there for prerequisites and preventive controls. But for those, as you're mentioning, Jose, those specific duties, I would make sure then that in the job descriptions for those people, there's a section there that says this position is responsible for these food safety activities. Right, back to our pasteurizer example. Right, so if you're the pasteurizer operator and you have a job description, it should say in there your duties as the qualified individual, which then circles back and says, okay, now that means I have to put training in place for that qualified individual.
Yeah. And to your point, Brian, look, so let's say that there is a company and this company needs to have some sort of a third-party audit. Whatever they choose, SQF, PRC, FSSC, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. They need to have someone that is trained to understand what's in that specific code. Okay, let's say, because we're in the United States and most of the people here will be using SQF, each and every single company must have an SQF practitioner, which by default, if you read the code, is the person that is responsible for the development and implementation and maintenance of the program and so on. And I'm going to ask a question. Okay, so why people is not doing exactly the same thing with the regulations applicable to them? Why not reading the code? Why not reading exactly the regulation and how those regulations apply and what is the specific requirement? Because approving a supplier for SQF or BRC or FSSC or any GFSI is not the same as approving a supplier for the FDA. There are two 100%, 180% degrees opposite ways to, actually it's not opposite, it's different. The requirements are different. So why people are not doing that? How can you train someone if you do not know which are the requirements specific for the duties that will be performed?
Yep. If you don't understand the rules of the game, how do you play?
How do you play? Good point.
So one of the things in PCQI, and this is I'm curious to get your take on this, is FDA gives you two options, right? You can go to training and take the course and get your certificate, or you can self-qualify and say, based upon these qualifications, I'm qualified to do these activities. My recommendation, I don't care how much experience you have, take the course.
You know what, Bryan? You caught me on something amazing, because I'm going to say 2 or 3 days ago, I was having a conversation with a client. And after the conversation, I said, I'm going to send you the information about the law and the regulation, blah, blah, so you can update your program. And I was reading the definition. And you know what it's amazing about that definition is that in order to become a PCQI, yes, you could be a qualified individual for that specific product and process, plus taking the training, or you could be qualified by job experience. And at that point, I remember my father telling me, look for the intent in the law and the regulation. And I said, oh my goodness, hold on. Qualified by job experience? Job experience on what? Job experience on understanding what is inside the regulation and each and every single detail of the regulation. Now, is there any kind of job experience that will qualify you for a role that is brand new? Really?
That's an excellent point. How can you be qualified in something that you haven't had experience in?
Yeah. And especially because of the approach of the preventive controls. And I'm getting back to these preventive controls. Preventive controls is not HACCP, period.
Right.
Is preventive controls using the same 7 principles of HACCP? Yes, exactly the same ones, but the approach is different. So we need to understand that not every single preventive control is going to be applied in one of our steps of the process. We have preventive controls that could be applied outside of the flowchart.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is too, is if you choose to go the self-qualification route, which is very dangerous, let's say that you have a problem in your plant and you have a class 1 recall. And now FDA is in there and they're looking at your documentation and they're asking you hard questions and saying, why are you the PCQI? Yeah. What training have you had, et cetera, et cetera? And you say, well, I've been doing this for 20 years. And to your point, right, what do you know about the regulations? FDA could very well come back and say, well, you had a class 1 recall. Evidently, you don't understand the process very well. Your qualifications aren't very good if you've had a failure. Right?
And they will do that.
Yeah, you're putting yourself at risk.
Yep.
Take the course. So for training, the interesting thing with training is I made mistakes early in my career relative to training and taking on too much, right? And this is a flaw in quality people, right? We want to help and we want to do things and we're willing to take on areas of responsibility that may not be properly managed by us. And training is one of those things. And so, we'll take on GMP training and things like this, and we'll train the plant and we'll do all these things. And then we're out on the floor and somebody, to your point, Jose, earlier, is not wearing their hairnet properly or things like that. And early in my career, what I would do is I would go and yell at that person, right? Hey, what are you doing? What? Where's put your hairnet on? Or, and they go, oh, right, and they'd fix it and they'd go away. And I go, and I'd walk away. And if I was visiting and it was one of my plants, what would happen then is that person, after I left, would go up to their boss or whoever, coworker, and say, well, who is that? Oh, that's Bryan. He's the VP of quality out of corporate. Don't worry about him. He's gone after today. What did I fix? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So what I did was I started figuring out, and it took me a long time. I'm kind of slow, right? And I'm like, training is the responsibility of the personnel in charge. So in this example, the supervisor.
Yeah. Yes.
So what I learned is they do the trainings. They need to be responsible for the qualification. And I got more to talk about on that for sure. But what I would do on the plant side is that same scenario. I would see somebody whose hairnet wasn't quite right. Nothing, it wasn't direct contamination of product or something like that, right? I would go and find the supervisor. And I would say, oh, okay, Joe, you're the supervisor here? Yes, I'm the supervisor. And you're responsible for this area, right? Yes. Is this your team? Yep, this is my team. Very proud of my team. They do excellent work. I'm sure they do. I have a question for you. Okay. That person over there, their hairnet doesn't look quite right. What why is that? Why aren't you managing this with your team? And their eyes would get wide, right? And then they would go to correct that behavior with their team, and then I would walk away. The response was the correct one at that point in time. So now after I left, the supervisor goes up to that employee and says, hey, fix your hairnet. What are you doing? You know, I taught you how to wear the hairnet. You need to wear it properly. That was the VP of quality who was just here, and he just yelled at me. I got in trouble because of you. I'm watching you, buddy. You need to wear, you know how to wear that. If I catch you wearing your hairnet wrong again, I'm writing you up. Right. Now it's being managed properly.
And you know what? There is always an opportunity for improvement, Bryan, because let me tell you one thing. Now that we are talking a lot about the culture and the implementation of a culture and empowering people, and I mean, empowering, really? That's about training. You know, it's about how effective is the training that we are, you know, teaching, that we're using with all of the employees. Because at the end, what we need to achieve is consistency on the products that we're making, consistency in compliance with all of the requirements, mandatory or voluntary, I don't care. Okay. So look at this from the system standpoint. Okay. If anyone is performing checking a metal detector, and the metal detector is a CCP, and another activity could be sweeping the warehouse where no product is exposed, and any of those two activities is not performed exactly as written, you do have a deviation. Yes, there is one deviation that is very high risk and one deviation that is basically, I don't want to say no risk, but still, you know, you are deviating from the requirements of the of your own system. So under the scope of the systems, you had a deviation. And in order to correct that deviation, you need to spend time and effort and money, of course, in going through all the right steps in order to get to the root cause of that problem and try to do something to prevent reoccurrence. So one question when you're going through the root cause problem is, what about the training of this person? Who trained this person on doing this?
Right.
Oh, he was hired this morning and he was just, you know, given the broom and say, hey, go and sweep. Say, really? So what is the procedure? What is the frequency? Who trained this person? Is the trainer qualified to do the job? You know, because that is something that on a regular basis, people basically forget. Who is the trainer? Is the trainer qualified to teach a job? How can I teach the use of a metal detector if I don't know how to use a metal detector?
I have nothing to add to that. Perfectly said. Right. Something that used to drive me crazy. So let's say I'm at a manufacturing company and I issue a complaint to my supplier. Right. Let's say that they send me product that's damaged or it's not labeled properly on the pallet placard or something like that. And I send them a complaint and they have to respond to my complaint with corrective actions. To your point, if they respond back quickly, a couple of days, and the response back was retrain individuals involved, I know they didn't do anything. They just filled that in, right? Probably all they really did was go out and yell at that person and said, hey, I told you how to put that placard on there, right? Do it right next time, right? And they're done, right? I know that supplier didn't do a good job.
And you know what? Now, because one of the components of a food safety system is food defense, and eventually I can grab and include food fraud, which which includes intentional acts. Intentional is people, okay?
Right.
Writing up someone, or maybe hey, you are not wearing that hairnet properly. Maybe that person don't like that. And instead of using the culture approach and having rewards and having, things to motivate people to do the right thing, we take this other approach, which has been the approach for years now. Well, now you are creating the perfect conditions for your system not to work effectively in food defense or food fraud.
Right? Yep. Like Zoe says here, right? Address the root of the issue, right? Because if you don't find what's going on beneath the surface and causing these issues, they're just going to keep occurring in different areas.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And I'm sorry. Francisco had a good comment here too. Training first, then everything cascades after that. Absolutely. Yep. That's what we're talking about.
Yes. So look at this, Bryan, in systems, and I'm going to again the high level view of this issue. You first identify which are the requirements that you need to follow. Then you develop your manual, your food safety system. And then once you're done, you need to validate the control procedures that you develop. Okay? Because this is the other thing. Why training people on procedures that are not validated? That you have no clue if they are going to work or not. Yeah. That is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Oh, I mean, it's crazy. Absolutely crazy. One of the things, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the things I do when I work with a company to put new processes in place is I will go and talk with the group who's doing that job that I'm going to be putting together, let's say a work instruction for. And I'll say, okay, I want you guys to teach me, pretend like I'm a new employee here in receiving, teach me how to receive, right? And they will say, and it's funny, it always goes the same, Jose. People automate what they do, right? Once you do it for a while, you figure out how to do it. It's like swinging a golf club, right? If you know someone who's really good at golf and you see them hit the golf ball, you say, wow, how did you do that? And they're like, well, what do you mean? I just hit the ball and it goes, right? It's automatic. It's the same in production facilities, right? Or any other job. Once you become good at it, most of what you do becomes automatic in your mind. And so you have to extract that out from them. And if you ask them in my example, right? Well, okay, teach me how to receive. And they say, well, what do you mean? You just receive. A truck shows up and you take stuff off the truck and you put it in the racks and right? No. So then you start working with them and you say, how do you know a truck is going to show up? Oh, well, we get the shipping manifest list for the week on Mondays. Well, who do you get that from? Oh, the logistics coordinator in the front office. Ah, okay. So then you get that. And then what? Well, then we know the trucks come on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and UPS comes on Tuesday. Okay, great. Now what? It's Monday. Do you just all kind of stand there and look at the doctor? Well, no, right? And so then you walk through that process with them. And then you identify where the problems are in the process. Right? So you'll say things like, and it's interesting as they start seeing this, because you start pulling it out and then they understand. You say, okay, well now, for example, let's say, all right, we're going to check the seals on the truck. Okay, great. How do you do that? Well, we pull it up to the dock. Well, hold on. The truck is still shut. Oh, you're right. Yeah, we have to go outside to check the seals before we pull up to the dock. Right. So if the seals don't match the bill of lading, what do? Do you just go and bring it in? Well, no. We have to get the supervisor. Right. And you go through this mechanism, right? Very, very different approach than a quality manager sitting in an office and writing what he thinks it should be, and then going down to the floor and saying, here's receiving procedure. And they read it and they say, this isn't what we do. Right?
Yep. Yeah, when I was auditing, I saw a lot of that, and there is a lot of evidence in the industry that is happening. So look at this. You're going to train someone, and you are going to use a procedure that is not validated. Okay, so there is no evidence if the procedure is going to achieve its intention. So let's say that you, and I'm going to use some silly example, metal detector, and you are concerned because most of your equipment is made of stainless steel, and then the one that you're using is ferrous, and you don't have a stainless steel one. Okay? Look at this. So I'm going to train this guy. Hey, you know what? You need to grab the one, put it on top of the product, make sure that the product runs through the equipment, and if you see the light blinking, the metal detector is working fine, and you're done with your procedure. Can I verify that he or she is doing that? Yes, I can do that. So the key here is that you can verify something that is not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
That's how amazing our systems, and the lack of understanding of what is a system is what is bringing us into these kind of conversations, and the lack of effectiveness of all of these procedures, because people have no clue what they are doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, then one of my favorite points on that too is, right, okay, let's say that even they've got the metal detector set up properly. It's been calibrated. The aperture size is correct. They're using ferrous, non-ferrous, all the different wands. Everything's all correct. I like to ask the question then, okay, great. What about plastic? What about glass? How are you guys doing that?
Yeah. Bryan, how many times you have been in a company where they have glass and brittle plastic? Or look at this one. The hazard analysis says foreign matter. If you put foreign matter in that hazard analysis, I'm going to assume everything. So I'm going to be asking for all of the controls for each and every single kind of foreign matter. So if that person says, oh, I have a metal detector, and I'm going to say, yeah, metal detector for metal. But if you put as your hazard foreign matter, I want to see which are your controls for wood, for ceramics, for glass, for brittle plastic, and so on. Right. So again, going back to training, I remember one time looking at a video that if we do not explain during the training the why and what is the criteria of that specific procedure, I mean, Bryan, really? You don't have the criteria. You don't have a wall that separates something acceptable for from something that is not acceptable. How can you make a decision if your activities are right or not?
Yeah. Good question.
So who's defining what is that criteria? Are we using that? Do we have a validated procedure? And then the actual training itself, is it measured? Are we actually transferring the knowledge that is in our documentation? That is going to be a very good question. And when I'm expecting an answer, when I was auditing, I said, okay, how do you train people? Oh, we show them a video. I said, really? Can I see the video? Can I see the procedure? And the video, the procedure has nothing to do with each other.
Right.
So what people is training on?
Well, and I think that's part of the false belief that a lot of people have in production facilities, that training equals a PowerPoint and a video sitting in a room, and that's not true. You always, if you want effective systems in a plant, it has to reflect the real world, and training takes place on the floor. And here's how it always works. Quick story on this, right? Is, okay, Jose, you own a company and you want to hire a new person, and you go through the interview process and things like this, and you bring a new person on board, and you say, okay, Bob, really glad to have you here. Bryan is going to be training you. He's going to show you the ropes of working here, right? And so he gets assigned to me, and I'm like, okay, Bob, glad to have you here. I'm going to show you how to run the packaging machine, right? And I work with him, and I show him the ropes, and I show him the buttons to push and the heater heads and how everything works and these type of things, right? And I work with this new employee. After a while, you're going to come back to me and say, hey, Bryan, how's the new guy, Bob? How's he working out? And there's only one of three answers. The first answer is, Bob's doing a great job. He's learning fast. He's got a good attitude. I think we'll be able to kind of let him do things on his own here in about another week. The middle answer is, Bob's okay. I've been repeating some stuff. He picks it up after a while. He'll be okay, but we're going to have to supervise him quite a bit. The third choice is, oh my God, Bob yesterday, I think he came in, I think he was drunk. He picked a fight with another employee. He's already taken 2 sick days. Right. We need to cut bait with Bob and find somebody else. Right.
Yeah.
That's training. That's training. Now, the problem is when you go to a plant and you ask a supervisor, okay, that guy over there who's doing that job, is he trained? Yes. How do you know? Because I'm the supervisor and I've been watching him and I know. It's not the right answer. Show me the training, right? So the way I look at it, the way I look at it, Jose, there's 2 main boxes of training. There's the training that we've been talking about, which is the more formalized training, quote unquote. It's the things that everybody in the plant needs in one way or another, right? So everybody needs to be trained in GMPs. Everybody who's on the floor needs to be trained in lockout, tag out. Everybody needs to be trained to use a forklift, on how to use a forklift. These type of things, right? Those particular trainings that the company needs to do. Then there's the job specific training, right?
Yeah.
And that's the supervisor's responsibility. It's the example we were just talking about, right? There's a list, right? If I'm the, let's say I'm the lab supervisor running the lab in the plant, and I have technicians working for me. They need to know how to run the pH meter. They need to know how to clean the pH meter. They need to know how to use the scale. They need to know how to log in samples. They need to do how to do the micro testing, blah, blah, blah. It's my job as the lab manager to document all of those things and say that, yes, these people are qualified for these tasks. No, these people are in training for these tasks. And no, these people are not qualified to do these things, right? They haven't gone through the training yet. So as an auditor, if I come to you and ask you, that's what I want to see.
Yep.
And a lot of times I don't.
And you know what, Bryan? The other thing is that most of the people will call training sitting people and watch a video, a PowerPoint presentation, or, you know, maybe attending to a formal class, but eventually, and again, this is just one option, the instructor may not be capable, qualified to teach that specific class. So the key here is for an effective training is measurement. Okay. And at the end, we need to find out if people is capable of performing, because it's not just about passing a test. Right. I mean, I'm many times I'm using a very silly example, but to make the point. So let's say that I'm a new employee in a facility, and this facility receives and processes bell peppers, only green and red. And it's my manager says, okay, Jose, your responsibility is that you are going to that specific place at the end of the conveyor belt, and you're going to be receiving the bell peppers coming from the outside, and you separate them between green and red.
Okay.
So there is one line for red, one line for green, and that's all your job. Okay. Jose, this is your test. Where do you need to go? Well, I need to go to the end of the conveyor belt. And what do you need to do? Well, to separate the red and the green. I got 100 in that test. Okay. So great. And on a regular basis, it is very common in our industry that people are going to take the passing of the test as a full evidence that the person is capable of performing. And guess what? So now me, Jose, I'm going to the end of the conveyor belt, and I'm going to start receiving the bell peppers, and I'm going to start separating between green and red. And 2 minutes after I'm doing my job, people start screaming at the end of the line, hey, what's going on here? We have a mixture of green and red, whatever. And when my manager, my supervisor comes and says, Jose, but you passed the test with 100. What's going on? Oh, I forgot to tell you, I'm colorblind. Right. Who checked if I do have the right skills to do that job? Like you mentioned, who checked that?
Right. Right. I think kind of bringing it back up to a higher level, Jose, what we're really talking about here is training is not a one-time thing, right? Where you set somebody in a room.
Nope.
And you have a magic wand and you go, poof, you're trained, right? And then all is well. No, training is continuous. And it takes place on the floor between a operator and their supervisor, right? That interaction between those people. Yeah. That's where it is, right? And it's very, very easy for us going in to evaluate a facility to say, okay, do you have effective GMPs? Oh, absolutely. We have training and we have drills and we give people awards at the end of the month and these type of things. Okay. And all I have to do is go on the floor to see if he's right or not.
If it's effective.
That guy's not wearing his hairnet right. That person didn't wash their hand. I mean, whenever FDA goes to a plant and does an inspection, right, and you read the reports from FDA, right, in the 483s, It's always two categories, right? It's here's the food safety information I looked at. Here's the GMPs that I looked at, right? That's how FDA
Yes.
is deciding if you're effective.
Yep. Yep. And again, if we go back to that specific topic, Brian, and I'm going to say a rounded number. 60% of all of the violations or observations in a 483 are observations against the GMPs.
Yeah.
So who trained them? Why they are not capable of performing something as simple as washing hands, putting a hairnet properly, not wearing the watch, or not hanging their own street clothing on top of the machine or something like that.
Right. And I tell you, as a quality professional in a plant, and you're going through an evaluation and you go on the floor and you see those things, there's nothing more embarrassing, right? You work and you work and you work and you think you're doing the right things. And within 5 minutes of the inspector being on the floor in the plant, they're seeing violations. And you're just like, right? And the problem may be you're trying to do it.
Go ahead.
If you're trying, this gets back to what we started the conversation with. If you're trying as the quality manager to do all the training yourself and then expecting people to follow what you say, no. Food safety culture, no. It's a team, team effort.
Yes. And Bryan, I'm always using something that is a fact when I'm talking or discussing anything regarding training. Training is about humans, and we're not the same. Even though that we're humans, if we're Homo sapiens, all of us, we're not the same. And we have different, ways to learn. And some people are very, they're okay in just reading something and they already know what to do. And some people are more visual, and just by looking at a video, they will know what to do. But then if you explain that in words or you make them read something, they may not know. And we need to deal with all of these besides the different cultural backgrounds of each and every single person, which play a role, and also the language that is being used during training.
Yes.
Okay, so we have so many different variables that will make the training ineffective that they all need to be considered in this process of training.
You know what? I'm gonna actually put this in the comments because that was such a good thing that you just said. Training is about humans. I love it.
I mean, really? Of course. Look at this example. So, Bryan, how many times you have gone to the movies or watch a movie in your TV or something like that, and you like it? Let's say that, oh my goodness, that movie was great, whatever. And then you see that movie again 1 month or 2 months or something after that. And guess what? You're going to, oh my goodness, I don't recall that. Oh, I don't recall that. And you were having time, a nice time watching the movie, not getting paid for doing a job. Yeah. So frequency for training, going back to your original topic, yes, needs to be very frequent.
And on the human side of things too, right? We've all posted on Facebook, oh my God, I just saw this movie and I loved it. It is guaranteed within 2 minutes, somebody will post on your thing and say, I didn't like it.
Yep.
We're people, right? We all have different viewpoints and perspectives and all these things, right?
We're humans.
Now, when's the best time to do training, right? Should you do the training at the end of a 10-hour shift with the sanitation team and they're all tired and wet and dirty and they want to go home? How effective is that going to
work? It's not going to work.
No, it will not. All they want to do is go home. That's right. All right, whatever you say, boss. I'll fill out the form. Okay, fine.
Yes. What else do we have in our chat?
Helen has a comment here. Hello, Helen. Nice to see you. May I also add that the only proper training to do the job correctly, but how to react when something goes wrong. You are speaking my language. In my book, I have a whole section on quality systems, and I talk about this, right? It's the receiving example. And thank you, Helen. I think I owe you $5 for putting that comment in there. It's perfect. So many times when we create processes and procedures and train to them, Jose, we just document what to do when things go right. Step 1 through 20. Yes. Okay, great. What happens along the way if something's wrong? What happens if the seal numbers don't match the bill of lading? What happens if you open the truck and a squirrel jumps out the back? What happens if it smells like rotten beef? What do you do? Do you just shrug your shoulders and say, well, the procedure doesn't say anything, and you put it in a rack and you let somebody else worry about it?
Nope.
Ah.
So
What do you do?
easy answer. Bryan, you have a deviation? Great. You need to go through your process of continuous improvement of the system and make sure that you correct whatever went wrong, root cause analysis, and prevention of reoccurrence. And that is going to be repeated over and over and over each and every single time that you have a deviation, period.
Yes. Once again, Jose, my friend, 45 minutes. We could probably keep going on for another hour. Oh, training. This was the perfect topic today, right? Because it really goes back and ties in so much of what we've been talking about recently. This is food safety culture. This is all of these things of, as Zoe had said here, right? Training is the root of the issue. It doesn't matter how good your programs are. It doesn't matter how smart you think you are. If you don't have good training systems in place that teach people what to do, and to Helen's point, things that they need to do when things don't go right to elevate through the system, you're going to be having a very, very frustrating time.
Yes. Yes. And actually training per se, because of that human thing, training per se is challenging. You know, trying to deal with different type of people is difficult. It's not easy.
Yes. Well, to your point, right? Different languages, different cultures, different dispositions, different levels of awareness because you're tired from working and all these type of things, right? And people, what are those studies that say you forget 80% of what you learn within a week or two, right? You have to go back and repeat these things. And it's back to that golf example, right? That excellent golfer didn't become an excellent golfer overnight, right? Practice.
Oh, no.
Practice.
And besides the fact, Bryan, that maybe it's because that person has a natural ability to play golf.
Yeah.
Maybe if you grab that, wonderful golfer and you say, okay, here is your mountain bike. Go this trail down the hill and then you start jumping whatever. That guy's going to die. So being an athlete does not mean that you're going to be good at everything.
Very, very true. Yeah. So one of the things, so for people who are listening to this, so you know, say my email. I have a tool that I use for documenting your training, a little Excel file with the green, yellow, red, and things like this. Drop me an email, and I will send you that Excel file. And it is an amazingly effective way to show auditors, okay, who's that person? Oh, that's Jose. What's he do? He's the machine operator. How do you know Bryan is the supervisor that he is qualified for that job? You can use this form to document that process and use it to explain to the auditor how you train your team and how you know, to your point, Jose, how you know they're actually effective at doing it.
Yeah. Because
as FDA says, if you don't document, it didn't happen.
It didn't happen.
Yes. Another amazing one. Thank you, Jose. It's these conversations. It's always fun because after we do this on Fridays, for the rest of the day, I'm ready to go for the rest of the day. It's a great way to start the day. So please, everybody, we do this every Friday at 8 a.m. Mountain, 10 a.m. on the East Coast, and we discuss all things food safety. And again, this is not just about what we want to talk about. This is about what you want to talk about in your contributions to this food safety chat. So thank you, everybody. Amazing comments today. Really, really good. And I had a great time today, Jose.
And you know what, Bryan? I believe that if we try in a different time to talk about training again, we are going to have a 100% different chat than the one that we have right now, with more example and more things again.
Yes.
Because this topic is endless.
It is. Absolutely right.
Yep.
Well, so thank you, everybody, for joining us. Again, we'll be back here next Friday, and we hope you see you there. And don't forget to bring your drink and join us in a toast. Yeah. So we'll see everybody next Friday.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
It was nice. Thank you. Bye. Have a great day.